Well, anyone with half a brain cell already is acutely aware of pay back the money. It's only really a catchy phrase, though, because the president has made it very clear that he's got no intention of paying back a cent for what they're calling the Nkandla upgrades, maybe the Nkandla development altogether. The disregard of institutions is growing. The High Court government showing, especially during the Omar al-Bashir departure from the African Union summit in Johannesburg, that it is also beginning to look at the courts as something of a hindrance. Everything from golden handshakes to corruption to denialism to Eskom and e-tolls. It's perhaps to ask the government, what have you done for us lately? Joining us via Skype is Prince Mashele. He's Executive Director at the Centre for Politics and Research, and in studio, Mzoxolo Mpolase, the Managing Director at Political Analysis South Africa. Prince, let's start with you on Skype this evening. It's nice to have you with us. Are we too hard on government?
I don't think we are too hard on government. I mean, the latest scandals that you have mentioned should make all citizens concerned. It appears to me that government increasingly is becoming unaccountable. The behavior on the part of those who run our government, it appears to me, that suggests that they don't care about public sentiment. I think that there are grounds for people to be concerned. I don't think you are too hard.
We're early in an election cycle. In other words, we've got another general election, I think, in 2019. Government's got a lot of time before it faces any serious no confidence vote. Do you see any moves happening within the ANC to bolster itself, to make itself a little bit more election-proof come 2019? Or do we see the status quo persist?
I actually don't think that the ANC will do anything to reverse the bad publicity that the ruling party has gotten so far. But there is an attempt, by the way, by the Secretary General of the ANC. He has actually called for an alliance summit. And discussion documents towards the alliance summit suggest that the Secretary General of the ANC is prepared to make startling admissions in terms of weaknesses facing the party. But if you look at the conduct of those who are in government representing the party, it looks like those who are in the Tula House and those that are in government actually don't sing from the same hymn sheet.
Now, the big question is, of course, how long South Africans will continue to tolerate the sort of level of disregard with which they seem to be held. That is going to be tested very clearly at the local government elections next year. Nelson Mandela Bay for the ANC looks vulnerable. Perhaps Gauteng, further erosion of ANC control and power in Gauteng. But Nelson Mandela Bay is going to be the interesting one. Or do you see any other pockets of quite strong electoral resistance?
Look, Nelson Mandela Bay is where all of us are looking, because the ANC previously performed very badly. I mean, they are in majority by 2 votes in that municipality. So the fact that they've just deployed Denny Jordan to be mayor of that municipality suggests that the ANC is actually in panic mode. They're trying everything in their power to repaint themselves as a party that can govern that municipality. But in general, Bruce, South Africans don't seem to care about this scandal, especially at the level of people on the ground. If you look at every election, political analysts usually say the ANC is going to perform badly, but the results tend to point in the other direction. I think there are particular interests at local level that drive the behavior of voters. Other than what we read about in newspapers. So there is a gap between public sentiment as it is expressed in the media and the conduct of voters on the ground. And that is something that we need to pay attention to.
Prince Mashele, I'm going to let you go there. The Skype line isn't fantastic, but thank you for joining us this evening. Prince Mashele is Executive Director at the Centre for Politics and Research. Mzoxolo Mpolase is in studio with me. I mean, it's quite depressing. I mean, do you agree with Prince's analysis that there just aren't enough South Africans that really care about the state of the nation to do anything about it, either left or right?
I think that's quite a cynical view. A lot of people have, I would say, what they consider staple issues. So, for instance, if you're living in suburban Morningside or Sandton, you've got staple issues that you'll typically complain about, around potholes, around visible or practical service delivery issues. And this is what will inform your participation in our system. So you go to a rural area, for instance, it will be issues around basic services, so the water, survival.
Yeah.
So as a result, it then becomes very easy to tap into the currency of political participation of those seeking basic services. So it's something quite simple as, for instance, I was in the Eastern Cape last week, where you're seeing out a lot of these sort of borehole water projects starting to emanate everywhere. Meanwhile, for the past 4 years, there was no activity whatsoever. Then if you ask that electorate there, they'll say, well, of course, we've seen improvement. Therefore, our vote will remain as such.
And then you look at the Daily Dispatch from East London, for example, and you look at the big toilet scandal involving, amongst others, the General Secretary of the ANC's wife, and collapsing toilets, not installed pit toilets, no real improvement. But voters around the world are pretty gullible. I mean, they want to believe the best of the political movement that they've sort of trusted all their lives to do well by them. And so the strong brands persist, in other words, regardless of what really happens on the ground.
Certainly, and that's why in business we talk about brand loyalty. When it comes to voting behavior, it's actually much more of an emotional response rather than a reasoned, logical response. Seldom do you ever find a political system throughout the world which has this sort of legal, rational way of thinking about what is the policy of this party, what is the value proposition. So usually what sticks is, it's almost as if watching a football game or a rugby game. It's usually the sentimental aspects rather than that this team is the best performing.
I mean, Prince's contention was that, we are seeing an erosion of morality within the ruling ANC. We are seeing an ANC at Luthuli House and in government that just has stopped caring, which seems that even by my standards, that's pretty cynical.
Partially correct in some sense, because when you go to the sort of morality of things, it also links to the vision. To my mind and my analysis, most of what I encounter, whether it be at the local government level and national level, is that there's seldom ever a vision. Everyone is doing all these activities, but they don't know how it ties into our main vision as a country.
Occasionally then you'll have a government minister standing up and going, National Development Plan, and everybody goes, oh, it's a National Development Plan, but we're seeing this shotgun effect of policy and implementation.
Yeah, it's usually, the National Development Plan is usually an afterthought. What happens is that people are just fulfilling their job descriptions. They don't know how they tie into the greater narrative of the country. And in terms of sort of the erosion, I do agree in terms of structural performance. So for instance, this year they have the National General Council, which is basically the review of ANC policies, the structures and so on. And prior to this, they were in the run-up to this, they're supposed to have the ANC Women's League Conference, the ANC Youth League Conference, and the ANC Veterans League Conference.
None of which has happened. No.
Exactly. So that speaks to my mind about the structure. The structure is compromised, and therefore if the structure is compromised, the politics cannot sustain themselves.
But does that suit Luthuli House?
No, of course not.
Does it not suit Luthuli House? Because then if you don't have the different wings of your organisation who've got any structures and have any say, you can do as you please. It becomes less democratic along the way and more autocratic, which is considerably easier in the short term to manage.
Certainly, and of course sometimes some of these constituent organizations, the ANC Women's League or Youth League, they're there to sort of provide solidarity and a greater mandate rather than sort of a decision-making power. But nonetheless, in the sense of it disintegrating the structure, it means that that political culture that obtains within the ANC makes its way to government, because after all they're the governing party, and therefore it means that the country, the state of governance is also compromised. And we've seen this, whether it be the World Economic Forum reports, whether it be it the Transparency International reports, basically all IMF reports or any sort of external governance evaluating reports point to this.
Now people like you who intellectualize these issues, who will vote with their head rather than their heart, I assume, or maybe heart is still important, I don't know, but if you intellectualize it, it's completely unsustainable. This is a government bent on self-destruction, a party headed for the cliff, because you can't in any other democracy, sort of a more established democracy, behave like that as a ruling party. People will replace you. Here it's different.
Yeah, certainly, and you know, structures disintegrating then becomes a self-interest issue.
Yeah.
You know, sort of, I'll cling on to power because nothing is challenging me. I've consolidated my base, and really, what the ANC needs right now, you know, they often talk about the Lula moment and all of that. I think it needs another.
Look what's happened to Brazil in recent months.
Certainly.
Do you really want
yes.
it? Yes.
So they need another sort of unifier, another Mandela moment of saying, yes, the politics are important for the sustenance of the organisation.
Is
but
Paul
we need
Mashatile gearing up for that job? I just looked at him the other day talking at the gathering, the Daily Maverick gathering, and suddenly he knows he's vulnerable in Gauteng. He's chairman of the Gauteng ANC. He's been marginalized by the Zuma ANC. And suddenly he came out and he looked like he was having a little punch on the side.
Of course, and he's partially bitter in some sense, but he has that potential. But he's shown himself, you know, when he was minister, when he was in the in-group, if you like, to be quite, you know, I'd say it's susceptible to the politics of the day.
No, you're happy to play the game.
Certainly.
Yeah.
So only time will tell, because of course now, especially after the NGC, which is expected in October, you'll start to see these factions and these slates start to concretize around certain individuals, and certainly Paul Mashatile is one of those.
Yeah, it's interesting. Who are the top three then in there? There's Gwede. Is Gwede got the stomach for it?
Well, Gwede has isolated the alliance, so including Labour and including the SACP. So he doesn't have the stomach to go on a little bit more, but his power base is consolidated. Cyril Mpolase certainly, and also other individuals that are from KwaZulu-Natal, so in the sense of Zweli Mkhize, he fancies his chance there. So at the moment, these are the three main individuals that...
So we say, sorry, Paul Mashatile is in there?
Paul Mashatile,
Zweli Mkhize and Cyril
Mpolase, yes.
Now, I found the Marikana report really interesting, because I was wondering whether or not the knives would come out for Cyril in that Marikana report. But, like the rest of the executive, it was very neatly dispensed with. No, this is a police issue. It's a Ralph issue. Cyril, as the corporate face at that time of Marikana, no, not his fault. We'll carry on. I thought there may be an opportunity to stab him in the back on that one.
Well, I don't think it serves the interests of government. And also, you know, I've done a lot of rounds of these interviews around the Marikana report, and I also always point people back to the frame of reference, the terms of reference that established the commission. The mandate was not to look at what the executive or political leadership could have done. Indeed, if Ian Farlam had, I would suppose, the will, he would have taken it and say that at the operational level, indeed, you can blame the Riyapayech as the Northwest Commissioner. Someone appointed that, and that certainly is political leadership, and unfortunately, he didn't have the guts to do so.
Yeah, it's a fascinating world that we live in. My thanks to Mzoxolo Mpolase, the Managing Director of Political Analysis South Africa, and from the comfort of his office on Skype, well, not a great Skype line, but it was nice to have Prince Mashele join us as well. That's it from Tonight with Bruce Whitfield. Thank you for watching. There'll be more Tonight tomorrow. Till then, bye-bye.